Hey, y'all. Thanks for being with me today on the Fishing Business Podcast. I'm Angie Thompson, and to get right to it, our guest today is one of my favorites. In fact, he's on the tippy top of my favorite people list. If you've been around the fishing business, you probably know his name, and if you haven't, you will one day. It's Jeff Kolodzinski. Nobody calls him that, though. Everybody calls him Kolo. He's famous in the fishing industry for his heart and his passion. He has a huge heart for people and for his family, absolutely for fishing. He's wildly passionate about fishing, and he has a heart for God. You can see that in the way he lives his life and the way he does business. You're going to learn a lot today from Kolo. Hang with me, guys. This is going to be a good one. So excited to see you. You know, I just started out by telling everybody that you are on the very tippy top of my favorite persons list. And I can't even really say that we've done that much business together, but no. We've just been friends, and you're one of my favorite people.
Well, our industry has so many people, and that's one of the biggest benefits about being in the fishing industry, that you get to cross paths with amazing people. You're one of them, and I'm stoked to be on here. This is one of the first episodes, so
I'm glad. Let's get started let's talk about, really, before we get started, let everybody know, what you do, who you work for, and kind of what your life is like in the fishing industry.
So I serve as a brand manager for Johnson Outdoors. So I do parts of the Humminbird, Minnkota, and Canon brands, all of our brands. And so typically, although I used to serve as a formal Humminbird brand manager, I now serve as a combined brand manager, and I take care of the content and the storytelling that really drives the brands. And so it's a role that, thank you, Lord, I'm blessed to do what I get to do.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for it. And it's a bunch of fun. Like I said, you get to meet really cool people, some Angie Thompsons included.
Well, so is a brand manager's job pretty much the same from company to company? Have you been a brand manager someplace else and it was kind of the same, or no?
It's an a la carte, and talk about wearing everything today, especially when the economy shrinks, you wear more and more hats. But typically a brand manager will take care of everything that relates to the brand, from the product to the listings, even have some input and teamwork with the sales. But then again, do all of the PR and promotions and so forth. So the way we've got it divided up, I take care of less of the formal brand manager components these days, and more of the content that tells a story about some really cool fishing stuff.
Yeah, when I saw you at the Bassmaster Classic, you were very, very excited about a content project that you had been working on, and that's really why I brought this up, because it's. I didn't know that every brand manager, you were essentially a TV producer in this project.
I had some really talented people who really are TV producers in their day job, but I served that role. And a colleague of mine, Brad Henry, and just probably 25 people who are insanely talented that I call sisters and brothers, all teamed up to do this one boat challenge. We took 8 anglers from around the country. Took them down to Mexico to Billy Chapman's Anglers Inn for an incredible fishing fish-off and a reality TV show. And so in that, we had built in all kinds of reality challenges, fishing challenges, a number of tests, and we made a 4-part series out of it. And it is out now. And it is one of those, it's probably one of the coolest things I think I've ever worked on. And to go at a place like Anglers Inn in Mexico, it's a big bass paradise.
Yeah.
The staff were great, and I think everything turned out really, really strong. I'm really proud of that one.
Can you talk a little bit about that piece of content? We all hear, from a marketing standpoint, that content is king. So how did you pitch that to say, this is what we need to do, and why did you need to do it?
Oh, I wish you could have been there. I wish I could have a camera and you could just have been a fly on the wall. I pitched that with fear and trembling is what I did. And we are a very conservative group. And this was so far outside of our walls.
I imagine.
That to just suggest it, I thought everybody in the room, I just stayed outside of a coffee cup throw, like when I pitched it. But we had our ad agency, folks at Swanson Russ on gunpowder, and a handful of us put our heads together early and said, we really think this is cool. We want to take fishing to a different level and have it not be about pounds of thrust and pixels and whatever, but about people and fun. And we want to talk to people that may not know Humminbird and Minnkota, and we want to do something that's real, something that people can relate to, and something they would just watch to have fun, and plus see the products and cool fishing action and gear. So we pitched it, and by grace of God, they said yes. And it was one of those moments like you get done with it, you're like, they said yes. Okay, now all the other spreadsheets are going to have to go in motion. Now we got to do this. It was a great moment, and thank God. I mean, there's 44 people on the shoot. I mean, it was a ton of people. It was a moving city. It was a fun thing to watch, and yes, I have skewed eyes because I was involved in it. But watching all the competitors do their thing and come out of their shells, it was a blast, and I think it comes across on camera. That was the one boat challenge. It's really good.
I've watched some of it, and that's obviously you guys did a great job. I mean, it looks like TV quality. It looks like it should be on Nat Geo instead of, just on the internet. Not that just on the internet means anything bad, because the internet is like, everybody is. But I think the takeaway there for someone who might be listening to this podcast, in my mind, is I'm always telling coaching clients that if you that people want to know more about you than the fish that you catch. And they want to know more about you than, what lure you used or what piece of equipment you're using. I mean, there's a place for that. Obviously, everybody needs that at some point.
It's further down the conversation line. Yeah.
Right. And so if what you've described right there, I think falls right in line with that thinking of if you're an angler that is trying to make a name for himself, maybe share some stories that are outside of the how-to you did it or where you did it. Maybe share some stories that might attract somebody who's not just looking for the next lure, right?
Yeah, and we were really careful. So all the people that we picked, they're really good anglers, but none of them were like elite touring pros from the BASS tour, right? So we picked some that were great saltwater experts. One of the big challenges is we wanted to kind of demystify the technology category, because frankly, in the marine electronics category, we make it be too technical.
Agreed.
And I'm tired of it. It's about people, and it's about sharing the fun of fishing. And so we wanted to take the technology and put it in a place where we knew where fish were at. And Anglers Inn obviously is the bass mecca of the world. And so we did that, but we did scenes and careful to embody the technology in ways that people would appreciate. And one of the things on our trolling motors, there is a follow the contour feature. Basically, you have a map, is cartography on your Humminbird, and that talks to your Minnkota motor through a one-boat network, hence the one-boat challenge. And so we set up one scene where the boats were sitting spot-locked on a GPS anchor, which means nobody is on the boat. We just have a remote control operating the boat. They stayed all in place, and then they actually met the competitors right up on the bank. And so I just got goosebumps all over. It was an amazing scene, and to watch the faces of the anglers was really exciting. But we chose to take our technologies and show them in a really cool way that you don't have to be an aficionado. But when you see that, you're like, hey, that boat is running itself. And if I get a Minnkota and a Humminbird, that's going to be pretty cool. I think I might want to consider that in my purchase journey. And so we brought it to life that way. And there's a number of places. And I will tell you, as a dude who was there, everything that you see in those videos really happened. The fish that were caught, the helicopters, and our brother Loman helicopters came through for us. But it was just an incredible shoot. It's something you're going to want to make time to watch.
100%. I love that. Okay, now we jumped right into some pretty big details here, but before we keep going, because you and I can talk forever, what's something that's not on your resume or your LinkedIn profile that people may not know about you?
My LinkedIn profile is horrible. There's a whole lot. We could talk for hours on that part, or even on a Facebook profile. Should I turn the clock back in terms of sort of experience or a resume, or what do you?
Well, I mean, I know some things about you. I know some things, and I'll go ahead and throw one of them out, because I want to talk to you about it later.
Dear.
But you are
this is where it gets uncomfortable.
Jeff Kolodzinski, aka Kolo, aka the Marathon Man.
Oh.
And people out there may not understand or know what the Marathon Man is.
Yes, because clearly when you look at me, I'm not a Marathon Man athlete. That is, Dairy Queen and I, we get along really, really good. So if I had to run a marathon to get a blizzard, I probably would. But that'd be one thing. So years ago, I was really blessed in my former. As a matter of fact, that is a seat box that I used in 7 World Championships, that matchbox there. I was really blessed to represent the United States national freshwater fishing team in 7 World Championships of freshwater fishing. And it was an incredible time of my life and a chapter where I learned a ton about the sport and the people that I love. And it's like the Olympics of fishing. You have opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies, and you fish for gold, silver, and bronze medals. And I got pretty decent at it. And I came back home, and for all the Northwest Indiana Steelheaders clubs and all the clubs that would sponsor me, because you raise your own money, just like going to the Olympics. And so I was much younger in life, and I would come back and show their kids and the families how to fish. And for me, that's what fishing is. It's not even almost about the fish. It's kind of about the people. And I'm thrilled when you get to combine fish and people together. And that's why I do the content and communications. But I took those skills of catching a bunch of fish, and by just an unbelievable marriage of events, I was able to meet a gentleman by the name of Tom Goodrich. I was doing a teach-in at a church in Lakeville, Minnesota, and he had these minnow races, and he had these minnows, and they were taking kids fishing, and they had thousands of families in the Minneapolis area at the time where they took fishing. I said, hey man, I got this really cool idea. I want to fish for you, and I'll give you a day's fishing. And what if we went to the local banks of the world, the large businesses of the world, small businesses of the world, and what if we got them to donate $1 a fish? I sat on the bank for a day, and I caught a bunch of fish, and I raised some funds for you. And he looks at me and goes, man, that's a great idea. We should do that. And I looked over him and I said, let's do that. And he goes, yeah, you could fish for 24 hours, and we'll call you the Marathon Man. I went, back up. Hold on. I'm thinking like 8-hour shift, 1 hour lunch, a couple breaks, some cool refreshments in the middle, and then we're good, right? And I looked at that and I thought, that's just crazy enough. Let's do it. And so for the first several years, I caught, 600 or up to 1,000 fish. And we got to a point where we were raising really great funds for the organization. Fishingforlife.org is their name. And then we're sitting around a board meeting to see who would get the funds distributed for after-school programs, and especially military families is our big focus. And somebody asked the question, they said, man, it's got to be a record, 1,000 fish, 1,500 fish. It's got to be a world record. And we looked, and Guinness, the Guinness Book folks did not have a record at the time. So we're able to set a Guinness Book of World Records for most fish caught in 24 hours. And then over the years, break it and break it again. I'm a cool kid from Gary, Indiana. And I think, like, what am I doing here on the internet or representing America in the World Championships? But I'm so grateful and so blessed to do it. And it turned out really well. And so over the years, we've been able to help so many families that have served our country in really meaningful ways.
That's fantastic. And of course you do that. Of course you're the guy who can break the world record or set the world record. And of course you're the guy that can fish for 24 hours. And I've watched it. And I've watched it at all hours. And I'm like,
I'm so sorry.
I can't believe they're still out there doing that.
Yeah. This September 9th, I'll do it again. There's a next gen program that we fund, and for folks who go off to represent our country in dangerous places, some of them don't come home. And so I was sitting years ago, and it was cold, and a cold front went through, and the fishing was awful. It was 2 a.m., dark, 30. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, I'm cold. I'm chilled to the bone. I had rainwear on. I was wet, and I was getting whiny. I was like a little sissy on the dock. And I was like, dude, you're sitting here fishing for people who are doing something real, and they're really in danger. Boy, it was a man up moment. And so then I thought, well, what if I were there? How would I feel? I'd want some guy to, help out or whatever. And I just said, why don't we do something for people that have families and kids? Who would teach my kids to fish if I didn't come home someday? Right. And that's an important part of our American heritage. we got together and put a pretty cool program together. We've got a director. We've got families who serve as mentors. It's like a big brothers, big sisters, only with the language of fishing. It's really cool. I'm really grateful to be part of that one.
It's very cool. It's very cool. And I love that you do that. And I'll put a link to the organization in the show notes here. And then I'll remind everybody when you start in September, when you do it again. So
I'll be training me and Derek in the meantime.
Practice with your reeling in arm. I've seen the giant fish you catch there, Kolo. So I don't know if you're going to have to train. But
okay, good.
All right. Well, hey, we're going to take a really quick break and reset here, and then we'll be right back with Jeff Kolodzinski, Kolo from Johnson Outdoors. Hey, if you're enjoying this podcast, check out fishingbusinessschool.com, where you can see video uploads of the podcast, as well as my blog, where I give you more practical advice on the business side of fishing. fishingbusinessschool.com. Come see me over there. We're back on the Fishing Business Podcast. Our guest today is Jeff Kolodzinski, also known as Kolo, known the whole fishing industry over as simply Kolo. Now, when you can just go by one word and it's not even your name, you know you're at superstar status. And that's Kolo.
Also, when you have a name like Kolodzinski, it is a hooked on phonics last name. So Kolo has a really good use too.
Kolo, you've worked at some pretty iconic brands during your career. And, obviously the brands that you work for now are, look, I grew up close to Eufaula, Alabama. So Humminbird is, it's just like a part of feels like it's just in my DNA. But before Johnson Outdoors, you've been there 10 years?
Coming up, so I'm serving in my 9th year. Yeah.
9th year. And before that, tell us a little bit about how you got into the fishing industry. What was your door in and how did you move up?
So I was fishing in the World Championships, as I mentioned earlier, on the U.S. team. And the team coach, Mick Phil, was working for the folks at Lindy Little Joe years ago, early 90s. That's going to be
Lindy Little Joe.
And and so I was Mick's stunt double. When he couldn't do a seminar at some, a local sports shop, I would serve and tell people how to fish and how to catch more fish using some particular methods and floats, the Phil Gold medal floats. And so a gentleman by the name of Ron Kiffmeyer and Nick Adams, the owner of the company, gave some snot-nosed little kid from Gary, Indiana, one of the biggest breaks of his life and said, hey, look, we'd like to have you do this. One year, I think in 93, they had me come out to the AFMA show in Las Vegas that is now the ICAST show, the industry trade show for fishing. And it just kind of went from there. I went through a degree training in geology. I thought I was going to be a geologist and mediate environmental catastrophes at home in Northwest Indiana. But God had a different plan. And it was a good one. I'm really glad. So I was able to complete college, signed on with Gander Mountain Retail Stores at store number 12. And then served them for about 14 years, something like that, 13, 14 years, and helped them do everything from store manager to store planning, clean toilets. There was nothing in that company I don't think I did, up to store manager. And then I served some store planning roles, did store layouts, did some buying, and I dipped fuzzy dead minnows and leeches out of a bait tank at some point in my career. And the funny thing, Ange, is all of those different chapters led up to what was the next one, and I was asked to serve as the vice president of marketing for Freybill Fishing Tackle. It was a privately owned company, small but with immense potential, and with a great group of people around me. We were able to take the company and grow it about almost probably 36% in just 3 to 4 years. And it was an amazing time fueling a brand and creating new categories, new product lines, and engaging consumers in a way that they hadn't been addressed before.
Right.
More than a voice. And that really led me now to Johnson Outdoors, where I sit as the brand manager for brands.
What a path. I love that. And I love that it started at retail. I tell people a lot that if you don't know how to get started and you don't know how to build relationships because you're not connected yet, the best place to start is retail. Do you agree?
I do. And it is a tough life. I would never yell at anybody at retail. You got to smile on your brother, even if you're having a bad day as a customer. But what you do is you understand what people want and what they won't tolerate and the things that they'll look for and where they need help. And so that deep dive and really just studying, maybe from a science background, studying the way consumers came into the store. What do they buy? What do they do? And you figure out how to serve them better. Like the stuff they don't want to buy, you don't stock that. The stuff they do want to buy, you figure out how to do that. And, you know, it is a very adaptive environment, and you've got to roll and be flexible with it. But that little sort of test tube, that training, helped me understand when I talked about things at Fraybill as a VP of marketing, or now my brand manager role at Johnson Outdoors. It'll help you appreciate when a product doesn't work, or it should work better or differently. And you really take their input at a whole different level. When you've had to look at some dude who's, I'm not terribly small, but when some guy is twice my size and I'm looking up and saying, yes, sir, I'm sorry that your line broke or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it's a different kind of rationale. And so you have an appreciation for what consumers go through, and it drives me now to make sure that when they have a Humminbird or a Minnkota or anything that we do, that it works right and that they're going to be happy with it. And ultimately, when they go on the water, they've got to be able to make a family experience. They look back on and go, honey, do you remember that? We were looking at, family photos last night with a puppy that we got 3 years ago, right? And we're going back and like, wow, how small were you when we caught that bass? Those are the moments that we do. And it's kind of part of our heritage at Johnson Outdoors. Sam Johnson, S.C. Johnson of Johnson Wax and so forth. Sam was a really bright guy, and he loved to be outdoors. And he saw the integration of the outdoors in his family, and he saw just how people came together and how stories were made and how relationships were built. And out of that love for the outdoors, he started to aggregate a number of brands: Humminbird, Minnkota, Canon, Jet Boil. We have Old Town Canoes and all kinds of divisions now. But Sam had something there. And when you're able to enjoy the outdoors, the people that you love, it makes work a whole lot more fun to do. And so it's part of our heritage to make people and families make memories in the outdoors. And I count it an extreme blessing to work here for Miss Helen and Johnson Outdoors.
100%. I agree with you. I think we're so lucky. And I ask people all the time if they think other industries are filled with people that are as passionate about what they do as the fishing industry is. What do you think?
I think no. I think solid no. I think we're really blessed. And I, when I'm giving seminars, I'll joke about this a lot. It's like, we don't sell caskets. Like if you're a mortician, it's a bad day. I used to sell men's suits, and then people would come in for a job interview, but it could be a funeral. There are bad days.
Yeah.
And we all deal with people. We're all people. We're all fallible creatures, right? But the opportunity to work around a topic that people love is pretty cool. And I don't take that for granted. And so, honestly, it pushes me harder to make sure they have a really good time when they go out and spend time catching fish and spending family time in the water.
One of the things that I used to say when I was in sales at Bassmaster, when I was approaching someone outside of the fishing industry and trying to explain why this was a good place for them to be involved, was I said, it's a perfect time for someone to hear your advertising message, because they're involved in a sport that brings them nothing but good feelings, really. There might be some frustration every once in a while.
Yeah, when your line snaps on a 10-pound bass. Yeah, it's a value.
But for the most part, they're in a great frame of mind to hear your message. Okay, so
people want to do.
Going back to the marketing part of it, how important do you feel, and I think we kind of covered this a little bit earlier, but how important is storytelling to marketing?
I don't think there's no distinguishment. Honestly, it is the same thing. Nobody has to buy a thing that I'm talking about, right? It's not food. It's not shelter. It's not energy. It's not education. They don't have to buy a single thing that I talk about. And so you have to come at it with that kind of reality first. But what you want to do is knowing what that person goes through, knowing their pain points, and knowing the moments of victory that make it worth going out and standing in the rain or cold or whatever else it is and catching a fish. That moment when you can capture that and say, hey, look, I've got this thing that's going to help you get there. And really, and marketers and fishermen, we can stretch the truth, right? But when you really know the thing that you're talking about is going to change the way that they get there and do that, it makes storytelling easy. And basically, it's just almost a recounting of events. And but putting them in the spot where they know that object is going to make the difference is the art and maybe even a little bit of science of it.
I agree, and also it makes. I don't know if I can quite articulate this, but it makes the consumer understand that you understand them, right? If you can take them back, if you can remind them of something that's happened to them before, or remind them of a position that they've been in before, and then they go, oh, they get me. That brand gets me, or that angler gets me, or that athlete gets me. And it builds a little affinity there.
It does. There's a respect. When you're going to tell somebody what to do or infer that you're an expert, you need to be. Listen, if I were climbing Everest, I'm not gonna ask me, right? I'm not that guy. You're going to have somebody that really knows and has been there. And so when you know somebody has the experience, you'll trust them. You'll trust them with that. You know, when I look at this fish that was offshore in the Atlantic, and when you go out there, it's a different world. Things can happen, and you may not even make it back to the dock. So you have to trust people and things for that matter in order to take what they say at face value and buy in and go actually take the product and take it out in the water.
So for someone who is getting started in the fishing world, how do they take what you and I just talked about and make that something that serves them and helps them serve their fans?
You know, in a day and age of social media, we talk about ourselves in a way that we never did. If you went back, even not that long ago, because I'm going to date myself again, not that long ago, 10, 15, 20 years, and you would say somebody would put a post about themselves in a picture or whatever else, they'd be like, you're so full of yourself. Are you serious? But it's different today. And one of the perils I see is we can start to believe the stuff that we make and say about ourselves. So one thing is, don't take yourself too seriously. Yeah. Number one. And number two, realize that everything, and this is coming from my life, and more screw-ups than the internet can hold. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to get things wrong. Don't think like you got it figured out. Figure out a team, get through it together with the people around you. And then make sure that you're making constant course corrections the whole time. I don't think we ever arrive in life at all and say we got it all figured out. And fishing is a great metaphor. It's a great training ground for that, because you can go out and catch a full limit of fish, and you can go to a weigh-in and you can take home a check that day. And the next tournament is the next day, and you go out and you do the same pattern on the same lake and the fish aren't there. It's a very humbling experience. You think you knew what was going to go on, right? And it doesn't happen that way. And you can't consider yourself the do-all, end-all, be-all, the font of all knowledge. And so when you approach all of this with that kind of mindset, you're able to look at things and make a course correction of, I didn't do this quite right, or I could do it better, or I could do it differently. I'm going to watch this person. I'm going to take elements of their personality or their discipline. I'm going to employ that to my little story here and see if we can make things better. But I would not be sitting here if not for the Gander Mountain, the Fraybill, the Johnson Outdoors, immense legions of talented people around me to pick me up when I screwed up. And when you recognize the fact that you're not a one-person band, that there are people around you that will help you and you'll help them, you can get through a whole lot of stuff together. And it's just so much better to have any achievement when you have people there with you. And in fact, the best ones are really the hard ones too. But much better together.
You are singing my song, and I feel almost a little emotional because, as you know, I've been through a lot in the last 6 months. And
I do, sister.
Just starting this project, I've been amazed at the number of people like you who I've called and said, hey, would you help me with this? And they have just been, what do you want me to do? How can I help?
Yeah. So for all you at-home viewers, this is the Jeff Kolodzinski episode, but we're going to take a little time out. Angie Thompson, one of the most talented people in the fishing business for a long, 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 long time. And her background, because she's too humble to tell you, so I will. was to work with the bass anglers as they came up through the ranks and say, this is how you come across stage. Hey, you might have had a bad day, but you can't talk about the bad day. Talk about the good and the fishing and how things went well and how you'll do it differently the next day, because nobody wants to hear you cry in your beer. And so there was somebody at all there, there was a point, this is out of context, but Kevin Van Dam had a first day. And many anglers know how to talk to a camera and know how to talk to people. And many are just good anglers and have to learn that skill set. So on this podcast, it's Angie's passion to take people who may love the fishing sport, but want to take it to another level. And so by watching these, and even a dork like me, you'll learn things, and you will be able to do better for your sponsors, do better for your personal brand, and do better for the industry and anglers as a whole. And there's so much to be learned. As I mentioned earlier, there's no point at which we've got it all figured out. But if you have some great people around you, you can do some amazing things. And by the grace of God, I got to do that. And I know you have too. That's what I have to say about that.
Did not pay him to say any of that. Okay.
Hey, I have many skills. Master of the obvious is my greatest skill. There you go.
You're so great. You're so great. I love you. Okay. So who is somebody on your team who is killing it in social media on your pro team?
Can I answer more than one?
Yeah, of course.
Good. I hit the beeper too, by the way. I would say Brandon Palaniuk is one of them. I'm going to give you a couple. I'm going to give you a couple personality profiles. Brandon Palaniuk is a super polished, very bright, very articulate, insanely good angler who just knows social media. So here's what makes Brandon special, or has made and continues to make him special. Obviously, he knows how to catch fish. He knows the product. He can talk about it. But years ago, he went above and beyond. He got a camera operator and he had a cameraman follow him around all the elite events. And so Brandon would make a film, a movie, very well polished, produced pieces of his entire season on the elite tour. And so for the rest of us pencil pushing mopes that sit around a desk too much, you got to kind of get into the mind of an angler and see what fishing on the elite tour, which all of us would like to do, what that was like. And so Brandon, he does really well on all of the social media forums, but that was really one thing that he did. I would also share another one, a GOAT. The greatest of all times. He'd be Kevin Van Dam. And people look at Kevin and say, yeah, he's everywhere and so forth. And he's got this reach and he's built up a fan base. And yes, he's won amazing amounts of accolades in fishing. But this is the thing that people don't know about Kevin Van Dam. That dude is the hardest working man in show business. If I'm going to have a photo shoot and I want to book Kevin, I'm 6 or 7 months ahead to find a single day. That guy works so hard for his sponsors that people look at him and they say, yeah, man, he knows how to deep crank fish. He's an efficiency fisherman. He does all this stuff. He's got great gear that helps him do this. I get all that. But that man's work ethic, if y'all could just watch him for a week, it would spin your head around and you would say, okay, if that's the bar, I got to raise my game to be as good as he is. And there's no surprise as to why Kevin is the greatest of all times. And I'm gonna tell on one old dog. I have one guy killing it, a goat and a dog. So
let's hear it.
Old dog is Matt Herron. And Matt Herron is that guy, right? And you know Matt Herron from the Elite Series.
Oh my God.
And he's not always rainbows and puppies and sunshines, right? So and he's just a down-to-earth guy that fishes and grinds it out. And he's a great angler and a wonderful human being. But he's older. You were just talking about, hey, if you don't know Twitter in your 40s, you're going to get left behind. Matt Herron was that guy. And Matt didn't do social media and he didn't embrace it. We were like, hey, man, you got to look at this. And this is a really thing. To Matt's credit, he stopped, full engine stop. And Matt went and he figured out how to do it. He went how to do videos. He got people to help him out. And he got very active on social media years ago. And I look at that. And again, not feeling that you know everything. Here's a guy who said, okay, I got to get right moment. Let's go figure this out. And he did. And the guy is crushing it for an old dog. Yeah. And I just take 3 profiles that anybody can identify with and say, embrace it. There is normal people, Angela, not me. I'm not going to throw you in this. Normal people go to pieces when a camera goes in the room and turns on. Abnormal people are like, I don't really care. I'm just an idiot. And it's fine. I'll talk to the camera. Right. It's not a big deal. But learning how to do that is a big thing. And so if you want to talk to your sponsors and talk about the people that help you get there and talk the fun about fishing, you have to be able to talk to a camera. And even if it's a GoPro camera, if it's your iPhone, does not matter. But be able to share the storytelling and the fun and passion of fishing is what unites us all. In fishing, I've always said this. In 1991, I first fished my first World Championships in Szeged, Hungary. Not long before that, it was a communist country. And so the wall, all of those things were in change. And I remember walking across the city center as they played our national anthem, and we carried the flag across the city center in the flag raising ceremonies. And I thought, oh dear, I don't know, is war going to shoot us? What's going on? And what a warm and welcoming people. I mean, they welcomed me in their home. We were like superstars, and we weren't deserving of anything like that. But I just realized the world over how common we really are and how much the language of fishing really unites us. And I look at times of political nonsense and drab and outbreaks and economic times. And what do people do? They go fishing. Who do they go with? The people they love. That's what's so great about the sport of fishing. I count myself blessed every day I get to be part of this gig. And I don't take a single nanosecond for granted. And you can tell there's a little bit of energy getting the most out of this ride at every turn. And people and fishing are a perfect pair. And that's what I get to do.
So here's the thing that I heard you say right then when you were talking about those three guys. Brandon is very, he's a young guy. He had a great story. He's very tech savvy. He's comfortable, and he is comfortable letting people in on his whole life, because when he hired that camera guy, it was everything. It wasn't just tournament fishing. It was stay in the camper with me and my girl and our dog and travel the country. And then there's Kevin, Kevin is sort of, Kevin's the complete package. He's an incredible angler. He understands business. He understands marketing.
He's so bright.
He's very, very smart. And he has a work ethic. But he has there's a certain thing about Kevin that's different from Brandon. And and then there's Matt, who is, like you said, he's of a certain age. Not that he's old by any means, but not Brandon. And he's a country guy. But what I hear you saying is the important thing about all three of them was that they exploited their own unique personalities to become who they are right now.
And over life, that changes, it morphs. I'm going to supersize your question, add one more to that, because there is some guy who lights it up in a wholly different way, and that's Gerald Swindle. If you're having a bad day, tune into Gerald Swindle. The bad day goes away. That is one of the funniest guys ever. And he's a guy that is insanely bright, and he does not get enough credit for his intellect, right? He comes off as just a country average kind of guy, and he's got, the kind of redneck humor, but you don't keep humor like that if you're a dull mind. And he is a really bright guy. But he's brought a different component to fishing, one that you talk about the storytelling and the entertainment value that people really love and appreciate. And obviously with 2 Anglers of the Year championships, he's got all the pedigree that goes with that. But people love Gerald. And so there are 4 different types. And anybody out there now, you can identify with some, all, or parts of those people and kind of build your path to telling what's special about you. At the end of the day, people want to know what's special about you. And we do it through the language of fishing. So hopefully, by watching these podcasts, a number of other people that have made tons of mistakes, they can keep you on the right path, and you can make a fun, incredibly rich career out of fishing and the fishing industry.
And you don't have to be anything other than yourself. And that's the piece of it that I think
I would fail drastically. And if being me wasn't okay, I'd be a failure at that too.
Being you is perfectly okay, Kolo. Being you is cool. Hey, I want to tell you one quick story about Brandon Palaniuk.
Yes.
When he came to the Classic, when he qualified for the Classic through the Bass Nation, he came from Idaho, as you know. He had the Brian Kirchhoff whistle, and I happened to meet his mother while we were there. And so all I could think about was, and I can't remember how old Brandon was. I think he was like maybe 23. He was fairly young, really young. And all I could think about was this poor lady. Her son is about to go to the other side of the country for a year and compete on this fishing tour. And all I could think
Easy.
about was, she's got to be so worried about him. So I told her, I was like, I'm going to look after him, because I went to all the tournaments.
Nice.
And I was like, I just want you to know we're all going to look after him, but I'll look after him in a mama kind of way. So on the very first elite event of that year, I think it was at Harris Chain, we had marshals, and on the very first day, there weren't enough marshals. It was real cold and some people had canceled, and Brandon didn't have a marshal. And so they were asking, I heard him saying in the meeting, in one of our production meetings, that Brandon didn't have a marshal. So I said, I'll go with him. And I was like, because I wanted to get to know him a little better. And also I wanted to be able to tell his mama that I was looking after him. And so I watched Brandon fish all day long. And I was like, this kid has got it. Whatever it is, this kid has got it. I was blown away by how relaxed and confident he was with me, and also with his fishing. And I knew immediately that he understood media by the way he treated me and what I saw him do with other people. And I was like, this is one for the ages.
The real deal.
Yes, absolutely.
There's something to be like, that Western mindset comes with a clarity and a confidence. And maybe it's being on the open land and making it in harsh environments. I don't know what it is, but he's got it. He's got a little bit of that cowboy kind of clarity to his confidence.
That's right.
And, as I look around at all of the opportunities to come up in the industry of fishing now, so I had my particular path, as I mentioned earlier. But listen, if they had a high school fishing team, I'd have been an academic all-star. My parents have been like, hey, listen, you don't touch a fishing rod, boy, until you get on the honor roll. I'd have done it. I would have been an academic all-star. I didn't. I was academically apathy is what I
don't believe that.
But look at all of the high school sports, and bass has been instrumental in creating that. College fishing as a sport now, you can get a scholarship. There are so many young anglers now with that kind of Brandon Polinook opportunity. Greg DePalma, one of the new names, really talk about searingly clear, great communicator. He won through coming up through the ranks. But there is a road for all of us to follow that dream. But I would just stress this. It's not only about fishing. And frankly, it may be 40% fishing and 60% communications and storytelling and content creation. But there's an incredible road for more anglers now than ever before to follow that dream that Brandon did. And doing it the right way just might get you there.
So, Kolo, it's clear that you love Johnson Outdoors, Humminbird, Minnkota, Canon. What is it about your company that sets it apart?
I've been blessed to be on teams or lead teams from 1 to 240 people. And so I've seen a lot of different cultures and communities and companies and product lines. But it's the culture. It's the culture that you can sell stuff or be part of a job, and at the end of the day, it's just a job. But when you have something special, your colleagues, and you share a mutual respect, and you have falls and victories and things like that, being part of a great culture and a great team is one of the things I really appreciate. And that starts with, frankly, Miss Helen and all the way down, and the people that work in the factories and really make it all happen by making it. In fact, that's one of the things that I really appreciate about us. Maybe as much as the culture. We are the last electronics manufacturer to make our Humminbird units, our fishing electronics and trolling motors in the United States. And for us, I love people across the world, fishing the world championships. I love everybody from every nation. I wish they would work and have a great place to job and have a job and earn a living. But I like our people first, and I want them working. And so when we choose to continue to make Minnkota motors in Mankato, Minnesota, and Humminbird fish finders in Eufaula, Alabama, it's a choice for us. And we feel that we've got a much better handle on the just-in-time inventory and management in those parts, but allows us to have a really good handle on the quality control. Making things overseas in my former life, there are a lot of variables when you're not there in the factory floor that you can get a whole lot of product at one time. I remember an apparel piece that did not come back well. And for us, we know we can keep a tight control on quality and really make the design and ingenuity part of the product. And so many of the people from the factory floors there to the engineers to even the marketing goofballs all fish and fish passionately. And when that drives you, when you know what the angler is looking for, you can come up with a thing like a spot lock or a one boat network or that next thing and say, you know what? I think anglers are going to really appreciate this because you're one of them. And you can't necessarily count on people that are far off to do that and to deliver that kind of innovation. So for us, it's 100% about culture internally and innovation that we get to share with the people outside of us. But we get to do that in our factories, Mankato, Minnesota, Eufaula, Alabama, and we do some Lake Master cartography in Little Falls, Minnesota. So shout out to all my people in all those places and you know what else? As the brand manager telling the story and the marketing, when I go to work, there is not a time when I'm on a project that I don't think about somebody on the factory floor going, you know what, this rivet goes here or whatever else. And when I do things like that one boat challenge, I'm always cognizant of there's somebody else making this stuff. They don't get to be in this part of it. I'm going to help them out and tell the story of the incredible jobs that they're doing. But for us, it starts at home and it starts with culture.
Well, God bless you, because I believe things that are made in the United States are in the main better, and
agreed.
I appreciate it's. I know it's probably would be easier to ship it offshore, but at the end of the day, and by easier I just mean less expensive.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think they're better quality.
I agree. And the fact is, you don't think of Eufaula, South Alabama as a manufacturing hub, but it is a state-of-the-art manufacturing facility. And they do things with printed circuit boards that aren't done anywhere else in America. And so there is a great amount of people and, there are families that are employed there, single moms, dads, young people that have been there for over 40 years. The average of our customer service is over 16 years in customer service, unheard of. And that's a thankless job, helping people say, the power should go here, whatever else
Right.
it is, how they help people out. But having people find a culture in which they want to contribute and last that long, that's special. And I'm blessed to be part of that special.
Wow, that seems like a perfect place to take a break, Kolo. You're doing my job for me here, wrapping things up nicely.
Teamwork.
So,
One team.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Jeff Kolodzinski from Johnson Outdoors. I really want to hear from you to know what kind of questions you have and how I can serve you best in this podcast. The easiest place to reach me is probably at Facebook or Instagram, where you can find me as Fishing Business Podcast, or on YouTube, but you'll have to search for me there by typing in Fishing Business Podcast. Holla! We're back on the Fishing Business Podcast. Kolo, before we go here, I want to ask you a couple of questions. If a guy is trying to get started, like we just talked about, a guy that's new to it, he's a high school angler, he's a college angler, or he's a guy that has just been doing really well in his area and wants to try to make a go of it, but they don't have any contacts in the fishing world. What kind of advice do you give that guy?
There are direct contacts and indirect contacts. The indirect ones, I'd watch YouTube and I'd watch social media. There's some great communicators in the sport of fishing. And I know your mentor and a guy I dearly love, Jerry McInnes, is one of the people that I call the pillars of our industry. The Al Linders, Hank Parkers, Jimmy Houstons, and the McInnes of the world. They started that. And, there are a lot of people that you can watch and get better by watching them. And then there's some direct people. Your local bass club is a great place to start. Your local fishing club, your local conservation club. The CCA, if you're around saltwater, is a great place to find like-minded people that care about our resources, and it will help you take steps throughout the industry. I think, I talked about my retail roots. Boy, that's an easy way to do it. And I think one of the sort of baked-in ways somebody could become quickly involved in the industry is to be a good ambassador for a brand. And man, it's hard to say what that looks like because there's a lot of people that say, I would love to get a free something or other. But if you can put the product in real use in areas where people can see it and appreciate it, then you're actually doing well by your manufacturers. The reality is, I, as a brand manager, I'm an investment broker. I can buy a print ad. I can buy a television show. I can buy a pro staff member. But if I think that we're going to get a better value by sponsoring somebody with some product, and it's just product, it may be cash or not product, I'm making an educated guess that this person is going to bring an authenticity to the product that I can't otherwise find in a print ad or a television show or whatever else. So one thing I would also say is, even if you just get product as your first start or your ultimate piece, be grateful for that and know that you've got to work that off for somebody who chose to invest in you, because they could easily have done that investment with someone else or in some other direction. So I always look at, if you can get a pack of hooks, help them out, tell the story, but do it in a way that's legitimate, it's authentic, and people that appreciate. It's not go buy this hook, because nobody cares about that. But if you can figure out, if you're smart enough to figure out where that package of hooks is really dialed in, and you articulate that, that's the way to do it. And as long as you help people, honestly, really catch more fish, and that's almost a cliche. If you help them figure it out and have better memories and catch a bunch of fish, you're on the right track.
Okay, that leads me to another quick question. I had a listener write to me and ask, how do you know when to ask a partner who has been giving you product? How do you know when to ask them for cash? It's an interesting question, and what I wanted to say back, and I want to see what you think about this. But what I wanted to reply with was, what have you been doing for them? Right?
That is it.
And so does that play into it?
It does. And you know what? I said investment broker. It's our job as a pro staffer, a field staffer, somebody who just got free product, to bring back increase. Like they sowed in fertile soil, us, they chose to invest in us. We have to bring back an increase and do more than they would have if they bought a print ad or whatever else it would be. And so one of the things I would do is, and I'm glad you asked that question, you cannot, so for the people that invest in you, you can't almost over communicate. And pick up the phone is impractical and whatever. But a note, I was at this in-store, we had 30 people, I had a seminar, it went really well, and I showed a couple of slides about this technology or AutoChart Live, I don't know what, Humminbird language, right? And then you send that on to the people that helped you out. They're going to have an appreciation for what you're doing for them, and that will give them a reason why they would want to continue their investment or add to that investment. So if you approach it with the mindset of, look, somebody's invested in me, it's a package of hooks, it's 29 cents or whatever else it costs, $1, whatever, it doesn't matter. I have to bring back $3 or $5 of value to them. And so by always keeping your manufacturers that help you out in the loop of what you're doing and how you're telling their story in a great, incredible way, both you and the people you represent will be on the same page of what your value is. And at some point you can say, and knowing that, right, and having done that, because if you don't do that, it's not appropriate to say, hey, can I have a check for whatever else? But if you're on the same page, you can say, hey, I've provided this value for you. Do you feel like you're getting a benefit out of this? That's a great, a transparent question, and be okay for them to say, no, we're not. Here's what you need to do. And getting that advice, that's what you need to do. You need to make that a checklist and go check it off the list.
Right.
But at that point, you can say, I've done all this stuff. Hey, I have an idea to go to another level. I think, based on the success that I've had here, I think we can do this. Would you be willing to invest in me this extra incremental bit so we can get to the next level? And at that point, it's in their court. They can choose to say yes or no. And whatever their decision is, it's final. You work at their pleasure. That's the end of the story. But saying, hey, look, I've got an idea. I see a vision. If this is in line with what you want and your strategies, I think I can get us there. Would you invest in this? And that's a great way to go about it. And those are always awkward times. Every other Friday, I am thrilled and grateful. Thank you, Lord. I get to have a paycheck. It's one of those parts where you look forward to, but you always want to bring back a value and make that be an increase for the people that invest in you.
One of the things I heard you say there is to measure what you've done. So to say, here's what I did, here's how many people saw it, and we value what we measure. We measure what we value, and I think that is something that is not as pervasive as it should be in our industry with the anglers being able to provide that reporting back. and to a sponsor to say, this is what I did. But what I really love about what you just said was you wrapped up three of my three big things that I talk about all the time, which is relationships. Because if you've got the relationship with the guy at the brand to say, hey, I've got an idea to pitch to you, then that means you've been building it, which is so important. Yes. You've measured, which is what I preach all the time. And then I can't remember the third thing. You
deliver a value, I would say. You've
delivered the value. That's it. That's right. You're not expecting nothing.
Right. And no matter how small an investment it is, they chose to invest in you. And at that point, it's on you to bring back a return on that investment. And let's be honest, we do work in the fishing industry. It is fun to bring a return on that investment. If this were stocks or bonds or whatever else, that's a different deal. That's a lot harder. But we work in fishing, and it's a bit more enjoyable.
And we are blessed to work in fishing. And I am blessed.
Coming in and going out, sister.
I'm blessed to be your friend. I'm blessed to have had this time with you. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge so generously. And I'm sure all the listeners and viewers out there will appreciate it too. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't, or anything you want to leave us with here at the end?
Ooh. Wow. I'm not ready. That was a question I don't even know. I just look at, I would just say thank you for thinking me worthy to have on. As a guy who has done so many different things, most of them wrong, a few things right, and had incredible people around me the whole way, I've been able to make a really blessed career. And when God says he's got a plan for your life, he ain't playing, I'm living it. And I've tried to screw that up about every way too, right. But it's really good. And I think if you just continue on and you make an effort to do it the right way, and learn from the people around you, you can make a pretty good go of this. I would just say, of all the things that I've done, I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful and really blessed to do what I get to do here at Johnson Outdoors.
Agreed. They're lucky to have you. They're lucky to have you, Kolo.
I hope. I'm just trying to bring back the value to my peeps. That's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thanks, man.
You're the best. God bless you. Stay well.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. It seems like one that I'll come back to in the future, because you tend to want to come back to people with a lot of wisdom, and we're lucky Kolo shared his with us. Thanks so much for being here today and taking the ride along with us. Please rate this podcast and leave a positive review. That is so important for making this kind of content findable. If you appreciate what we're trying to do here, take a minute and tell others. That's true of any online content that you like. Your opinion is what's important to the content hosting platforms, and they use your opinion and your feedback to decide what they show other people. Also, if you have a minute, head on over to fishingbusinessschool.com and join our email list. We'll keep you up to date when new content comes out, and we'll also send you some free resources as well. I'm going to sign off now, just like Gary McInnes used to sign off on my favorite TV fishing show, The Fishing Hole, by saying thanks to my dad, because he always had time to take me fishing.